Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome to the grand finale of Let's Play Final Fantasy VI. We have no pressing, unfinished business left to attend to, so all that's left for us to do is to go assault Kefka's tower, where Vector used to stand. But by doing that, we're not just going after Kefka, we're going after the entirety of the Warring Triad, which is gonna have some implications for not only the Espers, but all of the humans who have drawn magic from the Espers. And our half-Esper Terra. Alright, so enough about that for now. Remember back in the Phoenix Cave when we had to split into two parties to navigate the dungeon? Well, the final dungeon recycles that idea, but in a much more spectacular fashion. We have to form 3 full parties, and all 3 of them will be expected to fight. Since we have 14 characters, 2 of them are going to be left behind. The A team is going to be Terra, Sabin, Setzer, and Celeste. Our B team, which is going to be the weakest one, will include Gogo and Locke, supported by Edgar and Mog. And the C team will consist of Realm, her grandfather Strago, Shadow, and Cyan. Umaro and Gao just have to play together back on the Falcon. And this 3-group thing is why you can technically beat the game with just Celeste, Setzer, and Edgar, the 3 characters you get on the critical path. If each of them occupies their own party, and if each of them is capable of soloing several bosses on their own, and then coming together to 3-man the final boss, it can be beaten that way. It's just not recommended, because odds are you either have to do a lot of grinding, or you have to use some pretty cheesy tactics. These Vectars, this only happens when they're in their own formation like this. Formation of like 3 or 4 of them with no other enemy types. They have this tendency to stack on top of one another. The only other thing noteworthy about them is that they're all weak to Blizzard. So a single cast, Blizzaga from Celeste will wipe every one of them out. Okay, after getting the Hypno Crown, I come down to another set of conveyor belts. Occasionally we'll get to reverse or stall a couple of those out, and up ahead, shit, not yet. Dark Forces, they like to use death spells, particularly Doom. They also happen to be vulnerable to death. It's a weird sentence construction. They are vulnerable to dying. No, but like instant death style spells like Death itself, Banish, which is multi-target. Unfortunately, Banish tends to have a slightly shitty hit rate. But the chest up ahead, we're gonna get something really cool for Setzer that's gonna justify bringing him along in the A team. Fixed Dice is my favorite weapon for this character. He targets a random enemy with them with his attack command, and he rolls 3 d6s. You multiply A times B times C, the 3 dice rolls, and then you multiply that by Setzer's level. And if all 3 dice were the same, you also multiply the product by 3. And then you finish all that off by doubling whatever you get, and that's what gives you the damage. It ignores defense, and it ignores anything else that affects damage totals. So anything that boosts damage or negates it. So, you know how the Master Scroll is supposed to have your damage in return for giving you 4 hits per attack command? The downside of the Master Scroll is negated with the Fixed Dice. So all you're left with is 4 rolls of the die. It's fucking awesome! Means 4 dice rolls with no damage penalty because of the Master Scroll. It doesn't affect the dice. So, if you're really lucky or insanely high level and just a little bit lucky, Setzer can hit up to 40,000 per turn with that setup. He's not going to be averaging that high, but we're still going to see some routine 15, 20,000 damage turns coming at Setzer. It's really good. Oops, I didn't mean to switch there. What we want to do, since we normally have the Malulu Charm on for Mog for this week party, we want to swap that out for the Dragon Horn because we do have a boss fight. This one is just like Ultima Weapon. You can either read that truncated name as Ultima Beast or Ultima Buster. So Runic would help against him. We don't have access to that. He absorbs Holy, so no Holy Lances for Mog. Edgar has, I think, the Holy Lance equipped, but he's just going to sit back and spam Ultima anyway. Gogo is going to try to mimic Edgar instead of anyone else. He shouldn't mimic Mog at all. He can get away with mimicking Locke, even though it won't be ideal. Locke is not so bad for him to mimic. But if he mimics Mog's jump, he will wind up healing Ultima Buster because Gogo has a holy weapon equipped. This is what we want to do. We want to set him up to mimic Edgar's Ultima casts. Which isn't always easy. We'll get back to that in a second. So for being just like Ultima Weapon back on the floating continent, Ultima Buster is not much of a problem here. Also, isn't it a little bit odd that there were said to be two Ultima Weapons? The monster and the sword created from the monster, and yet here's another. So he's got 55,000 HP, which isn't a big deal for us up until now. Save for the fact that this is our weakest team. He's gonna hit some level 3 elemental spells. He's gonna hit Northern and Southern Crosses, which do slightly different elemental things, and Flare Stars for non-elemental magic damage. He doesn't hit amazingly hard, but there's one thing that we're kind of racing against, and it's his version of the Ultima spell. After he takes 12 hits, he will start charging for his own Ultima, and then he unleashes it 1 or 2 turns later. You can use the same tricks to survive his Ultima as the one that the Magic Master casts. The Ultima Busters is a little bit weaker, weirdly enough. So you can cast re-raises and jumps. Alternatively, it's not hard to just burn him down before that happens. So anyway, about Gogo. Gogo works by repeating whatever the last command executed was before his. But because of how speed and the turn system works sometimes, the order gets a little bit screwed up. And some characters take turns before others, even though you input their commands after somebody else's, so you sometimes have to be careful about when you use Mimic, because it can net you the wrong thing. You can accidentally mimic something you're not trying to. Now, that does make Gogo slightly interesting to use, especially in situations where you're like with Ultima Buster back there, where we're trying to avoid certain things because they would have healed him. And they're prepping you with a lot of force armor in this dungeon. You need quite a bit of equipment in order to just deck 3 whole parties out in the first place, but they're trying to give you some force armor to give you a little bit of extra elemental resistance. So another thing about this dungeon is that it's got a heap more enemy types and formations than any other dungeon in the entire game. Each branch of the dungeon contains several bosses and new enemy types. It is huge, but it's not exceptionally complicated. Pretty much you just, for the most part, you're going to be following a straight path with each party, and then eventually you'll hit some kind of dead end, which tells you that you need to switch to a different party until you find a button for them to hit. But then there are also a couple of these little branching pathways that have a little bit of treasure. Down the optional pathways, there's normally nothing huge. It's more supplemental equipment. And the more major equipment you find just on the linear path through the dungeon. Gammas are like most of the machine enemies we fought in the game so far. You want to attack them with either defense-piercing non-elemental damage or Thundagas. They will, upon death, do a really powerful single-target hit called Gamma Ray, and they can do that. Cool, missed. Gravity Bomb is not a big deal. I think they also have a move called Blaster that might be exclusive to some of the other mechanical enemies in this dungeon, but Blaster is an instant death for a character. We'll definitely encounter a couple enemies that use that frequently as we get into some of the later parts of the dungeon. For now, just more greater behemoths, Vectars, the Brontosaurus enemies, and the Marlboros. Greater behemoths are weak to Blizzard, as are the Vectars. Marlboros obviously use Bad Breath, which is that nasty, iconic attack that inflicts all the status ailments. And they're weak to fire, as you would expect, because they are big, gross plant monsters. There's also one enemy that comes up exceedingly rarely called a Doom Dragon, which is by far the worst thing that we can run into. There's a small chance it could wipe us with some of its instant death attacks. I think a lot of them are level dependent though, like they're... Oh, man, I don't remember because I run into them very, very seldom. But they have, I think it's a party-wide attack that... Oh, it's a very weird version of level X Doom. I'm trying to remember more specific mechanics of it. I don't think it's going to become an issue, though. Hopefully not. We have a pretty good spread, especially in this party, which is important. Okay, fuck this room. I didn't mean to switch. Wasn't gonna just abandon going down this path. But here is where I would like at least one character to have instant death protection. Not sure if the Nutkin suit does it. She has a few different status ailment immunity armor sets. She has one surefire instant death protection, though, and that is the Memento Ring, which I cannot find. There it is. Shadow also has access to this, but I don't know if I ever picked up the second Memento Ring. There's another one in one of the dungeons somewhere. This formation is the fucking worst. I know we have at least one person vulnerable to level 5 death. I think that person is Realm, but she has the Memento Ring, so that's okay. These are the enemies I was talking about earlier that also like to really spam Blaster, depending on how quickly you kill them. So Blaster, they could conceivably still kill at least half the party. Now we're safe. This is one particular room in the dungeon that used to give me just a heap of trouble. But it's also where you can learn the level 5 death lore for Strago. Not that that's gonna really come in handy. We have not taken the time to load Strago up with a lot of good lores. There are a couple of characters like that. There's Strago, there is Gao, there's Mog, who you have to babysit a lot if you want to get them to a really usable state. Like, all you have to do with Sabin is level him up a little bit, and he'll naturally learn his own blitzes. You can go visit Duncan to get his really good one, Phantom Rush. The same goes with Cyan, who will learn Bushido's on his own. But with some characters, you have to babysit them. You have to do a bunch of different things that take some time to teach them their really good abilities. Strago is probably the easiest of them. You just have to have him in your party to witness enemies using unique abilities to teach him new lores. But with Gao, you have to do all the training on the Velt, which can be a pain in the ass. I blanked out on the other one. Anyway, let's go and switch to Terra since we hit the switch with Mog. We're right next to a boss with the Realm Party, the C team. Innocent and Fortis. I think the Innocent is vulnerable to confusion, also can occasionally cause confusion. Brain Blast should be the one that does that, yep. Aside from that, you want to attack, because they're machinery, you want to attack with lightning. They are, interestingly enough, also vulnerable to water. I guess because they will rust. The most babysitting you have to do with characters otherwise is just, you know, grinding out a little bit of magic AP to teach them abilities from Espers, which is still a bit of work. Still takes some work to do that. But it's not quite as inconvenient as, like, training Gao to learn new rages. Oh, the one I blanked out on was Mog. Mog is a lot like Strago in teaching him new abilities, in that he just has to be in the right environment when you go to a new place, and he'll eventually pick up a dance specific to that tile set or that environment. But Mog works really well as a Dragoon anyway. And in case you're wondering why I switched to this team, there's no strategic reason behind it. I just accidentally hit the switch party button while trying to go into the menu with Realms team, so I decided to run with it. So once again, we come to another dead end with Terra's team. Same as the one that we just cleared out with Mog's team hitting the button. Next up, we're gonna have to remove that roadblock from the conveyor belt with Realms team, just as soon as we get done with Inferno here. Inferno comes with 2 sidearms, Striker and Rough. Let's start off with... Wow, that actually healed Realm. Very good. Shadow, I forgot to heal up before the fight started. Ugh. Yeah, let's work on that. Whew. 1800's not bad on Cyan. The 2 sidearms have normal monster levels of HP, so Ultimas work on them. They can dispatch them pretty quick. Or other forms of AoE. Alternatively, you could just ignore the arms, because he will gain the Reflect status once you kill both of them. And they grow back really quickly, and they don't hit super hard. So it's almost not worth taking them out. Or at least not intentionally so. Most of the damage from this boss comes from Inferno himself, the middle body. And a lot of that damage from Cyan's Flurry was focused on that. So that's also pretty nice. He is weak to Thundara, like most of the things in this metallic factory. Just to give you a hint that all the monsters here are going to be classed as mechanical and thus weak to thunder spells. And aside from that, not too noteworthy. So we have the flow of the dungeon down, and we're now understanding why all 3 parties need to be capable of fighting. Each of them is going to have to fight at least a few bosses. Like, I think Ultima Buster, back with Mog's team, was optional. I think the legendary dragons in this dungeon, of which there are 2, can be bypassed without having to fight them, but why would you just stroll right past them anyway? They're weak. But a couple you cannot avoid. You can't avoid Inferno. You can't avoid at least 1 boss apiece for each team coming up. And there's no sense holding on to those elixirs anymore. So at the bare minimum, you want to have a little bit of magic going on for most of your party. You want them to be of a sufficient level to at least survive it here. So like the low to mid 40s, that's not hard to grind out if you haven't been using a balanced party composition up to this point in the game. If you just go up to the Dinosaur Forest for a couple of minutes. But you don't have to go overkill on it either. So either use a balanced composition throughout the game, keep rotating people in and out, so that they will level up about equally, or you can take the grinding approach. And really the most important thing to do is Rainbow Brush for Realm. Make sure that you have some higher level magic at least acquired and taught to a few people. You don't want the whole 12-person squad coming in here with like level 2 elemental spells No flares, no Curaga, no Ultimas, nothing like that. You want at least a couple of people to have learned your really good spells, which means you really should go out of your way to acquire a couple of the endgame espers, at least. Not to mention all the good equipment that you get out of those dungeons. The Master Scroll, the Soul of the Masa, all that good shit. Even if you just stack one party really heavily like I've done, and then you do like a minimal amount for the rest of them, that's still gonna be sufficient to get through here. And here we have one of 2 legendary dragons in Kefka's domain. This one is only moderately tougher than the other one. The Skull Dragon deals a lot in death-based attacks, but both of the dragons in Kefka's Tower are pathetic. He's mostly unremarkable. He's weak to fire. You've already seen Doom from him. He can also use a move called Disaster, which is one of the nastier things it can do. It will inflict 6 status ailments. I believe one of them is Zombie, one of them is Confused, one of them is Float. I can't remember. Probably Blind and Silence are the others. It's like Bad Breath. Potentially on multiple people in a group. But it has shit for HP, so it's already dead. And the Doom counter continues to tick down while it fades. I don't think Shadow could have died, even if it was a couple seconds deeper into the timer, but still. Oh, and we go right into... Ooh, that's not good. Cryptdust is zombie? Oh, good. Cryptdust is an attack that we could have seen up to this point, but somehow just avoided, I think. I can't remember what Cursed Gaze does, and it appears to have no effect. Weird. Yojimbo is a really nasty enemy on his own, partially because he does this when he dies, which sets death. And of course, everybody loves going after Strago with death attacks. Don't know what it is. Probably just confirmation bias on my part, but I tend to notice that really frequently. He gets caught in instant death traps. So we're coming up to a really hard dead end as Realm's team, but this is a room where all of the party members are going to converge, but they can't quite unite just yet. They're separated by the bridge in the middle, which bisects the whole room. Now the next step is to take this party up to that same room. This party is going to go straight down the middle. And then Mog's team will enter from stage left. Speaking of which, let's go ahead and take him there now. And on the way to that room that everybody's meeting up in, we're going to run into the next legendary dragon, the 8th and final one, the Gold Dragon, which is actually a Yellow Brontosaurus. Standards for being considered a legendary dragon are pretty low. Standards for being considered a dragon at all are very low. This one is, again, pathetically weak, and it's a good excuse to show off one of the most broken things about this game, which is Vanish Doom. In a roundabout way, we've seen this trick before, but not in its full glory. Casting Vanish on an enemy does a weird thing to it. It causes the game to stop checking for certain flags, like instant death protection, which means that bosses suddenly become vulnerable to things that they aren't supposed to be, like death. There are only a handful of enemies in the game immune to Vanish, including the final boss of the game, which means that you can get away with doing that throughout almost the entire game if you really just want to bust that shit wide open. One of the cheesy tactics I referred to earlier on in the dungeon. There are even fewer enemies in the game who will punish you for Vanish Dooming them by withholding rewards from you. Not intentionally, pretty sure Vanish Doom is a bug, but Doomgaze is one of those enemies I think you will not get the Magicite for Bahamut if you Vanish Doom him. But that's all the final Legendary Dragon was worth, being a target dummy to show off a silly bug that can utterly break nearly every boss in the game. Now we have a little puzzle with a bunch of weights. This is to get all of them into the next room ahead, where they have even more switches to hit. Oh, and our reward for doing all that, for all the 8 Legendary Dragons, is the Esper Crusader. And Crusader did make a cameo when I summoned him with a Magicite Shard, and he killed Realm on her lonesome outside of the Fanatic's Tower. And got me my only game over of the playthrough. He teaches you Meltdown and Meteor. Crusader's actually 3 Espers, but they generally behave pretty similarly. Crusader's original name was also Jihad, which even in the early 90s did not fly for the American localization. Stupid, I know. It's not the only thing that was censored either. The Goddess painting and Siren's sprites in particular were altered, a couple more as well. They show a little bit less skin in the American localization. This all goes back to Nintendo being notoriously prudish in the days of the NES and the SNES. I think I brought that back up way back in the Dracula's Curse LP and with Maniac Mansion, which had an astounding amount censored from it. Oh, also, and since we just fought the last dragon, it's a good time to mention that there's also a hidden dragon buried away in the game's code called the Tsar Dragon. It even has a unique sprite that never made it in. That enemy does make an appearance, though, in the GBA version as the Kaiser Dragon. It's kind of like the ultimate dragon you unlock after you beat all the other 8 legendary ones. So we have another one to do over here on the left that keeps both of them depressed without needing a party member to hold them down. And then we can take the left and the right parties, the A and the C parties, and hit the 2 switches north of that room. Which again creates one more opening for our B team so that they can move on. There's another mandatory boss coming up for this team. And then each of the 3 remaining teams will have 1 boss apiece that they have to deal with. This fight is nothing to sweat over. The one ahead is going to be a pretty big problem. Guardian will run through several different battle programs as the fight progresses. This won't last long enough for him to reach his 3rd, 4th, or I think he even has a 5th. The final one he goes through is really dangerous, but you'll virtually never see it. This one starts off with some very basic attacks, magic attack lasers, which we've been seeing since, the beginning of the game? Next up, he's gonna run the Ultros battle program, which gives him a similar AI battle script to that of Ultros when we fought him for the first time. He's gonna use the multi-target tentacle moves, the ink blots, but he doesn't get dangerous unless you let this fight drag on. Even for this party, it's not gonna be remotely difficult. He is vulnerable to slow 2, and haste 2 is also really good against him. But I don't think we have either of those for this party. I may have taught Edgar them. It's not worth checking though, because this boss is honestly not worth the effort of buffing yourself or buffing him. You just have to deal some either non-elemental, barrier-piercing Ultima damage, or some lightning damage. Because Mog has the Dragon Horn going for him, and the Dragoon Boots, even his physical attacks are going to be a little more worthwhile than him casting individual Thundaras. Wow, he's hit one jump a couple times in a row now. I didn't quite catch the numbers. It was 2,000 something, and then it's about 2,000 a jump. If he hits more than one jump, it's completely worthwhile to just spam jump with Mog, but he's only hitting one per. Shit, did I forget to take the Malulu charm off him and put the Dragon Horn back on? Yep. Okay, that explains it. Whatever, the jumps are still hitting as hard as a single Thundara. Mog does not know Thundaga. That just draws this fight on a little bit longer than I would like. We're still not in any danger. He has, what, upwards of 40 or 50,000 health. And there's that. Oh shit, I wish I could have been doing way more DPS with Mog. Ended that fight quite a bit sooner. However, we won't make that mistake a second time. We really can't afford to either. With the next boss that this team has to fight. Ooh, shit. I think as long as I keep them topped up and in good condition, won't be a problem. But if I go too long without doing group heals, they will suffer really badly. Yeah, this statue looks familiar. We've gotten to the part where we assault the Warring Triad. Each team has to take on a different member of the Triad. So I'm going to do some prep. We'll be back momentarily. Okay, with the preparations out of the way, we come up to the first God of Magic. The first member of the Warring Triad, straight down the middle, is Demon. This is gonna be the hardest one for us just by virtue of going at it with the weakest party. Most of my preparations included throwing on fire-absorbent gear. Or gear that just has a higher rate of magic defense. He can be stopped. Holy will work really well against him, especially because we have that Holy Lance on Mog, so it's gonna proc extra Holy damage against him. The biggest problem that we're gonna face is just going to be keeping up with his damage output. With weak heals, no less, from Locke. Everybody else really has to be focused on damage. May have taught Mog or Edgar Kiraga, but can't really afford to take them off of DPS duty and sub in Locke's really subpar DPS in this fight. So the other thing about Demon is that he's also loaded up with positive status ailments. At lower health, he's going to start spamming either Arrow or Meteor. And that's going to be about 20k into his health bar. 20k out of 55 or so. Oh shit, and he does stuff like that, which is a very big problem. I already get that heal queued up too. So you want to keep everybody high. I also put the strength belt on Gogo so we'll get a little bit more HP. Gogo is the most likely one to die just from taking damage, I find. But if Demon uses those occasional blasters, then it's just instant death for someone. We need to get Mog up. Mog is a good portion of our damage right now. With Edgar spamming ultimas, that's fine. We need Mog up. This is, again, a part of keeping up with the damage that this boss can output. Even if we are absorbing a lot of his Firagas and his crosses like that, or mitigating a lot of that damage, he can still hurt. No damage to Mog, that's really good, plus he'll be up in the air. Gogo, that's not as bad as Gogo jumping against Ultima Buster. And it leaves time to get, well, Edgar and Locke are doing pretty okay. So they're nearly topped up. Arrow should not hit them very hard. Arrow will probably hit Gogo fairly hard, but not them. Meteor is the one that's going to be really scary. So we know that we've gotten him into a low state of health now. We should be a little more than halfway done, especially after this Ultima. Assuming that's gonna hit for the regular... Oh, no. Okay, cool. We were way further along in the fight than I thought. So that went about as smooth as it could have possibly gone. And that's including a KO in there. With a stronger team, Demon is nothing. Demon is no problem. But with our weakest team out of the way, we can throw the Malulu charm back on, because this team actually needs to backtrack. This team needs to go back to that original room and go back down the center of the bridge to hit a different button. Because you noticed that when Realm and Terra's teams took the left and the right, they got locked into this corridor here. But now this button opens up a door for them to take. Each of them on the left and the right, there's new doors leading to new paths, leading to different members of the Triad. This is not a group I like. These guys can set Confuse on the whole team. They can Doom up. Doom and Confuse... Oh, wow. Doom and Confuse are bad ones to have together. Oh, yeah, that was just a regular death. And I still have the Memento ring on Realm. Yeah, Confuse and Doom are bad ones to have together. Because you have no way of dealing with that status at that point. You're just at the mercy of fate. Holy shit. That's a bad version of that spell. Imp on Realm sucks. Because it means only Cyan and Shadow can do reliable damage. Flurry is really going to have to put in work. At least that's one of them that's going to die. Not the one I expected. We still need to take out the Madam. And then these things just have an obnoxious amount of health for what they are. So we have instant death, we have possible confusion, we have imp. Not a good formation to go up against. I feel like it's Realm's team that's been going up against the really nasty formations of enemies. And that is just not good to have going into the next Warring Triad fight either. The next one is... let's see. Yeah, the next one is technically more dangerous, but not with our party. Especially because Realm and Strago have so much HP here. Plus, we have Kiragas from a couple of party members, so we have better healing output, we have much more consistently high damage output, and higher HP in general. Fiend here deals more with ice elemental magic. The move that she uses in her desperation mode gives her the image status, the reflect status, and haste, which is nothing of consequence to us. The next one is gonna be the second hardest that we fight, which is saying something considering how powerful Terra's party is. For now, we just have to deal with this. The other problem with this boss fight is that it doesn't have inherently super high damage output. But we are running out of MP on this team. At least with Strago and Realm. I do believe I have at least one Mega Elixir. We have two. Again, no sense in holding anything back. And then we'll leave one Mega Elixir for later on. And that's just for... Mega Elixirs are more useful for the MP recovery aspect than actual healing. Will save us having to use an extra Kiraga, though. And we're back, looking good, able to continue chain casting Ultimas and Elementals. Even keeping the Kiragas going for when we need it. Also, this music is shared by 4 bosses. It's shared by Ultima Buster and the 3 gods, the Warring Triad. Should tell you something about their relation. The weapon that we get is, I think, Cyan's best weapon. We'll get one more sword from the next Warring Triad member, but it's disappointing. It sounds like the kind of thing that would be an ultimate weapon, but it's not. So that just leaves Terra's team to deal with their god, or in this case, goddess. Since Fiend and Demon are out of the way, the only one left in the Warring Triad is Goddess. She is slightly harder than the other 2, just on her own merits. She's got one particularly really bad thing that we have to watch out for. Hopefully I don't run into another random battle before I get a chance to get ready for this. There aren't any lengthy preps that we have to make for this one. We just need to heal up a little bit. Is that fight? God damn it. And it's this one too? Take 2, let's try this again. Goddess. Oh, she's awesome. Her sprite and that satanic looking platform that she's standing on. Right off the bat, you can see why this is slightly complicated. Luckily, Zone Seeker is awesome and will cover the entire party even though she splits us in half. This formation causes a little bit of trouble because it stops you from using things like Cura or Kiraga to heal the entire party. You can only heal 2 at a time with that. Okay, so that's a slight problem. Love token, we'll get to that momentarily. But it also prevents you from using Haste 2 to cover the entire party. Zone Seeker does not care. She'll barrier the entire party. Even split in half like that. So note Setzer's health. I think I may have gotten a little bit lucky. There's a reason why you don't want to use regular attack commands on her. Preferably because she can counter with a spell called Love Token on which causes damage that you do to her to possibly be linked back to the target of Love Token. That's why she said protect me. That's one of the most dangerous things that she does. There's another one that's slightly worse, though. She has a unique attack that she performs when you hit her 8 times. That ability is called Cloudy Heaven. It sets doom on the entire party, and it turns dead party members into zombies. That's why I preemptively cast Re-Raise, just in case she got that one spell off. So aside from a couple of her unique abilities, Goddess is not a really big problem. If you have low damage output and you wind up running into Cloudy Heaven, that's where she gets dangerous as hell. That's where there becomes a timer on the fight, especially if you don't have Life 3 or Re-Raise. And that is all 3 of the Warring Triad dead. We've killed 3 gods of magic, but something was slightly off. Nothing really happened when they died. So what it might be is that Kefka has taken all of their powers for himself. And if that's the case, then Kefka is going to be a god himself, or like unto a god. Now that each party has overcome their own unique individual trials, this brings them all together at last to face down the man himself, man responsible for the end of the world, Kefka. This fiery orange background is so cool. And that's a really impressive effect for the Super Nintendo. A fully rendered pyramid. It's such a simple, stupid thing that's so impressive for the time period. How long are you gonna let this destruction continue, Kefka? I've tapped into the ultimate power. Behold. Yeah, so just confirming it. The power of 3 gods of magic, all within him. He's taken their power a lot like we've taken the power of Magicite into us throughout the game. And he has used it to create some ridiculous stuff, as we'll see going into the final boss. Think of how meaningless each of your lives are. Kefka's, on top of being a classical example of a psychopath, he's also a nihilist. I just want to take a second to appreciate the music in the lead up to the final boss. The music of the final boss is a lot more technically impressive, but they have these synthesized screams mixed into the audio, and it's just haunting. And each of the people that we bring here have their own unique reasons to keep moving on, their own motivations. I think this scene shows what an awesome job that they have done with assembling this ensemble cast. The special old granddaughter and I have a brave and obnoxious grandpa who I can't live without. And we've seen all of this grow organically throughout the game. We've met them, we've seen them develop, and Kefka's theme kicks in. So what is it that we are preparing ourselves for? Oh, I cannot wait. Remember the whole thing about the Light of Judgment? He wields that effortlessly. The greatest power in the universe. Hell yeah. It's kind of an awesome demonstration of what he's capable of. I'll create a monument of death and destruction. So, going into the final boss fight, there's something of an ascent to be done before that. Oh man, right now it's just a black void as the background. But the actual background to the boss, I cannot wait to get there. Oh man, I'm having a hard time containing myself. So good. This is my straight up favorite final boss in any Final Fantasy. I know I've said before I have more of a nostalgic love for Final Fantasy VIII, and I think FF9 is just straight up the best Final Fantasy. Everything about the final boss fight in FF6 is perfect. Completely 100% perfect. The music, though, that's going to be the star. Also, there is a reason that we are determining an order for all 12 of our characters. They all get... Hold on. They all get to participate. Like I said, there's kind of an ascent that we have to take care of. More accurately, there's a gauntlet. Kefka isn't just the final boss. He's not the only one. This is his grand, grotesque creation. And there are 3 bodies or 3 tiers to ascend, and it mirrors the progression throughout the Divine Comedy. To that end, you could call this one Satan. You don't get to rest at any point, but that's why we got to pick our party like that. When one goes down, another one subs in. Basically the same as what happened in Final Fantasy VIII. We're gonna try to keep the KOs to a minimum, though. The synth vocals there, oh my god! I'm gonna take a pause at the beginning of every new stage of the fight. The music is very complex. I would encourage you to look it up. We'll get into that in a second. But the first fight was Visage. The 2 lower parts were the arms. The long arm you saw was killed with an instant death banish. At this point, it's worth noting a few things that will carry over between fights. Your HP and your MP don't fill up. Your statuses don't reset. And whether or not you use your 1 chance per character to summon their Esper, that all carries over. So you don't want to blow all of that early on. On this one, the silver head is called Tiger, the middle is Machine, the back is Magic Caster, and the blue bit on the front is Power. Each part, I mean, the names kind of explain what a few of them do, especially Magic and Power. Each part has a lot of HP here. And what you can expect is a lot of very high damage fire attacks and high damage output across the board. Zombie and Frozen are a couple of the statuses you also need to deal with. Frozen, I don't know if I ever mentioned this before, but the only way to clear that off, aside from waiting it to naturally wear off on its own, you can cast a fire spell on somebody who is frozen to clear it. Remedies don't work on that. I think the description for remedies say the only thing it doesn't work on is zombie and KO. It also doesn't work on frozen. Aside from that, you really need to just hang back and try to keep your damage output high. Ultimas are unbelievable here, especially with a Soul of the Masa on Terra to make it X magic. So you're hitting multiple targets for 14k a turn. That's invaluable. Terra is the MVP of this whole fight. Setzer's also going to be pretty good, but his multi-target damage output is not going to even touch Terra's. Nobody's is, for that matter. Even if you have a really, really broken Genji Glove Master Scroll setup or a good jump setup, doesn't really touch X Magic Ultima for this fight. They also take 2 trying to dispel you. This is one of my favorite parts of the song. The next set of bosses, there are only 2 parts to this one. There's the lady in the upper left, and the one called Rest. Lady will use Arise, which is full life or life 2, to bring back Rest at 10,000 HP if you kill Rest first. And after everything that you've just been through, this can actually be a dangerous and exhausting fight. Especially because towards the end, they're going to start casting Doom and Meltdown. But if you've saved elixirs for this point, or a mega elixir or two, then you get a chance to replenish, which I need right now. We have a Doom, so I need Celeste to be on re-raise duty. I mean, if Sabin goes down, then we just sub Edgar in mid-fight. And Edgar is pretty well rested up, I think. But just for our own sake, we're going to avoid that as much as possible. There's a Meltdown. Ugh. Yeah, we need to get to work on this. Oh, shit. Kiraga is going to top us back up. We still can't let this drag on too long to the point where we are already halfway out of MP by time the next phase of the fight starts. Because, again, we don't get to rest before we go into the final boss, who is Kefka himself. Firestorm, I think we should be okay with that. Terra's a champ and just blocked it. Oh shit, that's 2 in a row. Yeah. Again, dangerous fight. Very, very dangerous. If Calmness? Oh shit. Well, that's an instant death on Terra. And we didn't get a chance to hit a Kiraga. Yeah! Life, dreams, hope. Where'd they come from? And where are they headed? These things, I'm going to destroy. They even worked the laugh into the song. Finally, we have Kefka, who is looking quite a bit different. We need big heals ASAP. We ended that last fight in a bad spot. Actually, no. I didn't even need to burn those heals right that second, because he always starts the fight off with this spell called Heartless Angel. Just a cool spell name. We fight him in these heavenly golden clouds after ascending all this way. Man! In this godlike form. Heartless Angel reduces everybody to 1 HP. You need to deal with healing up after that immediately, because holy fuck, Kefka can get really rough. Once you do about 50% damage to him, or about 30,000 HP, he uses a spell called Forsaken, which is insanely powerful. But it differs from Ultima in that Forsaken does not pierce defenses, so you can mitigate a good chunk of it. It's the only difference between that and a really powerful Ultima. That's not going to be bad at all. Except if he had done that right after a Heartless Angel. That would have been a wipe. What happened there? Shit, the Runic. Oh man, Celeste's Runic really pays off here. She can absorb some powerful stuff that Kefka does, but like you saw there, I wasn't paying attention. I absorbed my own Kiraga. The end comes beyond chaos. So we've gotten him to the dangerous part of the fight, where he summons that head, and then you'll see a Forsaken coming out pretty soon. Dude, that was a good roll of the dice. We're already looking at like 16k. Shit, yeah, 21k from Setzer. This fight's... And then we're gonna have a 10k Phantom Rush. This might end before he gets that Forsaken off. Hell yeah. Setzer coming through in the end. I'm sorry for ever talking shit about Setzer. And it's kind of fitting we end the game off with the critical path characters, Edgar, Celeste, and Setzer. I wanted to end this with Terra, but what are you gonna do about an instant death with no re-raise on her and no instant death protection? Plus you have Sabin, the brother of Edgar. 2 Figaro brothers at the end. Oh man. The other thing that we luckily did not get to see about Kefka, because Setzer put in so much work, is that he, at that same critical point, that 50% mark thereabout, he starts countering any damage that he takes with attacks, which is normal for a boss, but there's also a slim chance of him countering with a defense-piercing attack called Hyperdrive, which will absolutely 100% kill any of my characters if it had touched them. And eventually he starts just straight up countering with Ultima if we let this go too long, and then even after that, he'll chain cast Ultima and Meteor like back to back. He starts doing nasty things the longer you let the fight drag. That's assuming you don't have any burst damage whatsoever. The key thing about that, though, is that he cannot use a hyperdrive counter while preparing to do Forsaken. And Forsaken, for all of the damage it's capable of doing, is a hell of a lot less lethal unless you aren't healing up properly. So with all of that out of the way, the most interesting thing about Kefka was his theme. It is 17 minutes long and plays throughout the entirety of the fight, including the ascent up to him, before you even get to Kefka himself. It's called Dancing Mad. It's one of my favorite pieces of Final Fantasy music. It is a hugely complex piece. It's also a leitmotif of his main theme, and even mixes in his iconic laugh, as you heard a few times. It is one of the grandest pieces of music I have ever heard in a Final Fantasy game or any game. It's also a storytelling marvel that I only fully appreciated when I read an analysis of it by Sweet Madness on Destructoid. At the beginning of it, you heard a song that you should have recognized. It was a song called Catastrophe, or rather you heard a remix of it, a leitmotif, if you will, which is what's playing when Kefka usurps the power of the Warring Triad on the floating continent and destroys the world. So that's how that starts. The remainder of the song weaves through Kefka's rise, his insanity, and finally his ambition, or maybe lack thereof, that led to all of that. And it finally goes into that leitmotif of Kefka's theme, which is just Kefka as before in a different key. Again, I'm gonna post the link to that. It's kind of marvelous how ambitious that song is, and how much it does to retell the story of Kefka. And then there's that final part of the song that starts with Kefka's fight, and it starts with a reprise of the opening theme when you start the game out, so you come full circle. And then the song mellows out a little, plateaus, you reach Kefka, and that's it. Kefka is this classical psychopath with no motivation of his own. So he revels in destruction, but he can't even commit to that all the way. Yeah. Edgar is Edgar, Roni Figaro, and the other side of the coin, Sabin. Man, so cool. was I saying? Oh, he's this brutal nihilist who kind of falls apart if he's not being led, which is why he spends the first half of the game playing lackey to Emperor Gestalt. But he's also too much of an egomaniac to be a follower. Through music alone, Kefka has more of a character, more of a fleshed out character than I think he's often given credit for. Man, why does this piece sound so much like a Final Fantasy IX song? Like Mog's theme in particular. Might be the instrumentation that reminds me a lot of FF9 and some of the more iconic songs to come out of that game. Oh, and this, the ending theme, which I'm not gonna keep talking over, but I really, really had to get my piece out on how fucking amazing Dancing Mad is. This is a combination of every playable character's theme. I mean, I'm sure you heard it, because the characters' themes are really recognizable, and you hear the melodies in there, especially when I pause for a second on Sabin and Edgar's. But I adore this ending sequence so much, because it oozes style and the art is so simple and beautiful there. Even Umaru gets a little piece of the action, even though we didn't bring him along. Him and Gao, everybody gets their closure here. So Katase wanted to have Realm painting a mural of all the major events of the game, and the mural was going to be Amano's artwork. Even Gogo gets something. The only reason that we never got that was because of hardware limitations, unfortunately. But then maybe we wouldn't have gotten this instead. And I like this a lot better than the sound of Realm painting Amano's artwork. I love Amano, but it's so stylish what we got. And with that, let's just continue listening as the ending of this plays out, because this is a really grand. I'm not sure why that scows. This is, on its own merits, is a really grand, impressive, ambitious piece. I don't think I'll ever stop being impressed by how good that page turning looks. And the depth of the shading and the lighting in this. And you. Oh, it's such a nice, lovely sentiment. So all we have to do now is roll the credits. And of course, we have an epilogue. Weren't quite done yet. But they even make the credits fun to watch as they roll by. Last piece of magicite. Because Terra has to lead them out of the tower for some reason. Flying in her morphed form. Holy shit, that looks fantastic. Oh, man. Final Fantasy VI is such an ambitious game. It's ambitious, and yet it was made inside of a year. There they are. We know where they're heading back to now. It's got... I mean, the heart and soul of FF6 is the ensemble cast. It's got this gigantic cast of characters, and they all feel like they've had room to breathe, that they've been fleshed out. There's been plenty of character development, and oh, this is a nice note to end on. Coming back to Dwayne and Kettering as the epilogue. So it's a nice symbol for them rebuilding after Kefka brought the world to the brink of destruction. It's this hopeful note to end on. New life springing up. People repairing the town of Moblis, one of the most badly damaged ones. And of course, one of the stars of the show, this gorgeous soundtrack. Does it really... Oh, man, does anyone else... Of course someone else does, but... It still boggles my mind how FF6 can have such a gigantic cast full of such big personalities that have so much room to grow on you. It's something that makes FF6 one of the most impressive games I've ever played. Their dedication to the cast. So few games feel like they're capable of pulling that off. Even other Final Fantasy games, most of them don't have casts this big. And yet they also don't have casts with this much personality. Despite having a lot less characters to focus their efforts on. The characters of FF6 were the very first things designed in the game, and the world was crafted around them. Normally in development, what happens is you get gameplay mechanics first, you get set pieces after that, and then usually the plot is written to fit the situation, to get you from point A to point B. Point A and point B being gameplay beats. But everything from the side quest design to how the world is blocked out, to individual dungeons, to the plot of this game, depends entirely upon the cast being this huge, endearing entity. Musical motifs need to fit around the huge cast. Gameplay-wise, you don't teach individual characters jobs, but they kind of homogenize in what relics are available through stat boosting, and that they almost all learn or are capable of learning the same kind of magics. But then there's still that natural job class commands to differentiate all of them, even in gameplay. So it's like a gameplay expression of each of their personalities. Just a nice touch. Also, this scene... Man. What a look or two. It's got some technically very impressive things going on so often throughout the game. Then you have the way it goes from the linear world of balance to the world of ruin, that tonal shift that accompanies it. Everything is such a master stroke there. And Kefka. I talked a lot about Kefka in Dancing Mad. Well, I was talking about Dancing Mad, rather. That's going to be the name of the episode, no doubt. But Kefka as a plot device is also super interesting, because the world of balance, again, it's entirely linear. And that's when Kefka is more of a lesser player in the story. You get that fake out with him in jail, too. And only at the bitter end of the world of balance do you find out that Gestalt is not going to be the main villain. That he gets passed by Kefka. And then you hit that wildly open world of ruin, and all of the spotlight on Kefka gives you something to focus on. It gives you this guiding light so you can sort through all of the open world chaos. Something to drive your attention forward, you know? So, shit. Love Final Fantasy VI. Even the gameplay, I like it a lot more than previous Final Fantasies. And I think that's because of, again, how focused they are on the characters, and it goes back to expressing their personality traits even through gameplay. One of the areas that I find FF6 a little bit lacking in is how tedious it can be to train those characters up, and how I don't really think the boss fights in general are up to snuff. Throughout the LP, you probably heard me say, like, oh, this isn't very threatening, this isn't very scary. Something that I love about turn-based RPGs is that they appeal to tactics and logic and reasoning. And when you have bosses that are as simple as this, that doesn't fully engage you. And I find that to be the case in a lot of Final Fantasies, which is why I think there's such an appeal to trying to break them open. Like, I think FF8's battle system is good not because of the mechanics of individual fights and random battles, but because you can put so much thought into ways to bust them. And you can do the same thing in FF6, but it's a lot more tedious to do so. But yeah, that's one of the only things I find to be a little bit lacking in 6. But what's lacking in 6, I think, is lacking in most Final Fantasy games, most JRPGs, to be honest. The fun is not so much in the combat, it's figuring out how to break the combat mechanics. That's really cerebral and engaging. And for actual really fun tactical turn-based battles, I'll always have stuff like Darkest Dungeon, which is such a big part of that game's appeal, is how fun some of those battles can be. Anyway, rambling now, thank you so much for watching this one. I really hope I did Final Fantasy VI justice, because LPs like this are really, really hard to get right without wasting a ton of your time. And I guess the only one left that I really want to do, I've done FF8 now, FF6 is completed, the only one I have left is Final Fantasy IX, which maybe I'll get around to that sooner than you think. For now, if you could leave me a like, subscribe for more daily videos, drop a comment, all of that stuff is more helpful than you know. Plus, I appreciate all of it, and I like reading the comments because we have such an awesome community on the channel. And if you like my work enough, and if you have the means to do so, I would love to have your support via Patreon over at patreon.com/scribe. And that is going to do it for now. Thanks for watching, everyone. Stay tuned for Resident Evil 7 coming up. Thanks for watching. Take it easy. Have a really good one, everybody.